Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. So today we are going to discuss about a brief history of the two Koreas, that is North Korea and the South Korea. We are also going to discuss in this video that why Korean Peninsula was divided into two separate nations and what has been the reason behind the Korean War that happened almost half a century before, and what is the reason that is still, despite such a long time has passed, both Korean countries or both Korean nations are continuously at war and conflict with each other. So first of all, if we try to go back in the history, what we can see that initially North and South Korea were not two independent nations, but there was a single country which we can call as a Korea. And as far as the unification of this Korean peninsula is concerned, it was the Silla dynasty of the Korea which first has contributed in unification of these land masses, and it happened somewhere in the 7th century CE. Further, it remained unified for century under the next dynasty that is called as Joseon dynasty that lasted somewhere between 1392 to 1910. If we talk about the similarities, both Korean countries have similar language and essentially culturally they are also same. Yet, if we talk about in last 6 decades and 60 70 years and more, they have been divided along a fortified zone that is also called as demilitarized zone. So this division basically has happened as the Japanese Empire crumbled at the end of World War II. As you know that Allies power had become victorious after the atomic bomb was dropped in the two cities of Japan. And after that, Americans and Russians quickly divided the Korean Peninsula into their sphere of influence, into their region of influence. So we'll try to understand how this all events have unfolded in the past. But before going into history, let us try to look at the geography of the Korea. So as we can see from this particular map here, we have the North Korea that is shown in the red portion, and then it is divided by a line that is called as 30th parallel, and to the south of 30th parallel, we have the South Korea. If you look at the whole Korean peninsula, on the western side, it is surrounded by Yellow Sea, while in the eastern side, it is surrounded by the Sea of Japan. As far as the North Korea is concerned, it shared its longest boundary with the China, and it has a small boundary with Russia, and then it has a boundary with the South Korea. On the other hand, South Korea is a country which is only has boundaries or land boundary with only one country, that is North Korea. If you go slightly to the south of South Korea, then we have a small water bodies, and to the south of this water body, you have the island of Japan. Now, if you talk about the overall terrain and topography of the Korea, both Koreas are basically mountainous and have hilly terrain. However, in the South Korea, some part which is in the coastal regions also have coastal plain like topography. In the terms of climate, since they are located at higher latitudes, they enjoy temperate kind of climate. And in terms of rainfall, they have higher rainfall or maximum rainfall during the summer season and less rainfall during winter season because of the effect of East Asian monsoon. So that is all about the geography of the Korean Peninsula. Now, before going into the history, let us try to compare the South Korea and North Korea. So, first comparison we can make in terms of population. And in terms of population, while South Korea has a total population of almost 48 million as per the July 2010 estimate, North Korea has total population of almost 3.2 million. Similarly, the capital of South Korea is Seoul, while the capital of North Korea is Pyongyang. In terms of bordering country, we already have discussed South Korea has only land border with North Korea, while North Korea has largest border with China, followed by South Korea, followed by Russia. In terms of land area, both are almost similar in land area. Similarly, the coastline, if talk about, South Korea has a coastline of almost 2,413 km, while North Korea's coastline is slightly higher, 2,495 km. The highest point of South Korea is situated in Hallasan, that is the highest peak of the South Korea at the altitude of 1,950 meter, which is situated in a small island of the coast of South Korea that is called as Jeju Island. While if you talk about North Korea, the highest point is called as Baktusan, which is at the altitude of 2,744 meters. So that is a brief geographical comparison as far as the two Koreas are concerned. So let us try to understand that why after having such a long period of unity between the North and South Korea, the division actually occurred. Basically, what happened in 1910 that the Empire of Japan formally annexed the Korean Peninsula, and till 1945, Korea's status can be considered as nothing but a colony of Japan. The situation changed in year 1945 because the World War II was going on, and it was dragging toward the end. And it was during this time when the Japan was about to concede the defeat, United States understood that they also need to take control of the Korea, because after the war US have to govern the Japan, as well as also they have to govern the Philippines island, and that is why they were very reluctant to take trusteeship of Korea also, and they were seeing as additional responsibility or additional burden in one sense. However, on the other hand, Soviet Union, another member of the Allied groups, they were more than willing to step in and take control of the Korea. The reason was the Soviet also used to or wanted to exercise control of Korea, but after their defeat in the Russo-Japanese War of 1905, the Russians have basically, or Soviet Union at later time, they basically have given control or have forgotten about the Korea. But at the end of World War II, they again saw that as opportunity to increase their foothold and stronghold in the Korean peninsula. Thus, further in August 1945, Soviet Union has declared war on Japan, and during this time, it went on and invaded Manchuria. The amphibious troop of the Soviet Union landed at 3 points along the coast of northern Korea. It is during this time also we have to understand the US already has dropped the atomic bomb, and the Emperor Hirohito of Japan has already started or already has decided and conceded defeat to the Allied powers. Thus, once World War II ended, two low-ranking officials of the United States government or United States military, known by the name of Dean Rusk and Charles Bonestell, they were given the task of delineating the US occupation zone as far as the East Asia is concerned. And while doing so, they basically, without taking into account the desires and wishes of the Korean people, arbitrarily they decided to cut Korea roughly in half along the 30th parallel of the latitude. And while doing so, they ensured that the largest city of the Korean peninsula in terms of population, that is later on will become the capital of South Korea, that is Seoul, they remain in the American control, that remained in the American control. Thus, due to this, Japanese forces in North Korea surrendered to Soviet because the US were more interested in South Korean part, and the Southern Korea, Japanese troops surrendered to the American. And that is when we can understand the beginning of the division of Korea started. Now, even after these incidents, there was a desire among the Korean elites and the Korean, we can say, government to have a national government, a national unity government that will control both North and South part of the Korea. However, US military administration, which was present in the southern part of Korea, they were fearing that there are leftist tendencies of many of the government nominees. And that is why US and USSR, who were supposed to arrange for a nationwide elections after division of the Korea to reunify it back in 1948, this event could not go on. The reason was because there was a lack of trust after the end of World War II between the Soviet Union and United States of America due to the differences in ideology. As you know, Soviet Union wanted to have a communist government and wanted to expand the sphere of communism in whole regions of the East Asia. On the other hand, US wanted to protect capitalism and also wanted to increase its sphere of influence. So due to this lack of trust and difference in ideologies between two superpowers, after World War II, the reunification of Korea as planned did not went on. So due to this, what happened in effect, the Korea remained divided along the 38th parallel, that was an arbitrarily drawn line. So since the division of the Korea went on and there was no attempt to unify the Korea, it basically dashed the hope of Korean people who, after independence from Japanese empire, wanted to have a unified landmass, wanted to have a single culture, single language, and wanted to live in peace, progress, and prosperity. Not only that, this division has a crippling effect on the economy of the Korean peninsula as well, because the division was so arbitrary that most of the heavy industries went to the North Korea, while most of the light industries and the agricultural field, the fertile agricultural field, remains within South Korea. Thus, this actually gave rise to political confrontation between the leaderships of South Korea and North Korea. So, how this political confrontation has panned out in the coming times, we have to understand that. Before that, we have to understand the political leadership of the two countries. So, as far as the South Korea is concerned, a person by the name of Syngman Rhee, he was elected as the first president of South Korea and was also accepted by USA as a genuine leader of South Korea. And Syngman Rhee, since he was more leading toward libertarian, toward capitalism system of governance, he started a low-level war against the communists in the South Korea and any other leftist who remained south of the 30th parallel. On the other hand, if we talk about the country or the region to the north of 38th parallel, it was led by Kim Il-sung, who was the military general who fought during the Japanese War, who fought during the World War II from the Soviet side. So Kim also, due to the Soviet support, he also began to quash political opposition, particularly those who supported the ideology of capitalism, and also began to construct a cult of personality revolving around him. And thus, by 1949, his cult of personality becomes so strong that his statues sprang up across all the North Korean peninsula, and he himself has dubbed himself as the great leader of North Korea. So we can understand the two political parties, two different kind of political leaders, and two different kind of political ideologies were shaping up or trying to shape up in the two different parts of the Korea. Now, this was a time when also Cold War began between Soviet Union and USA, again due to the ideological confrontation. So, as far as the time period between June 1950 to July 1953 is concerned, the Kim Il Sung, he wanted to reunify Korea and bring the entire peninsula under the communist regime. So, in attempt to do so, he launched an invasion of South Korea. As invasion was launched, South Korea was immediately provided help by United States and also under the umbrella of United Nations. And with all this help that has been provided to South Korea, it fought back against the North and supported by UN and troops from the United States. The war went on, and then China also later on joined the war. In the first phase of war, US forces along with South Korean forces were able to reach up to the capital of North Korea, and Pyongyang was captured. However, once the Chinese forces joined the war from the North Korean side, they were again able to repel back, and again under the continuous Chinese forces and pressure of continuous Chinese forces, the South Korean and US military have to withdraw back, and finally Seoul was captured back again by the China as well as North Korea. However, as the war dragged on, the countries and the parties understood that the war can go on for an indefinite period of time, and that is why it is not beneficial for anyone. Thus, it was finally in the year 1953 a truce agreement was signed, which is known by the name of Panmunjom Truce. Now, the reason behind this truce was because already all the countries have lost massive number of troops, and it is believed that more than 3 million people belonging from Korea, United States, United Nations, as well as Chinese forces were killed. Now, interestingly, what we have to remember here that this truce agreement, South Korea was not a party of this agreement. The agreement was signed between the Korean People's Army, which was essentially a representative, or we can say, from the North Korea, the Chinese People's Volunteer, who were supporting North Korea, and the United Nations Command, which was mainly led by US. So, what we have to remember here that even as of now, there is no such truce agreement or ceasefire agreement or peace agreement, as we can say, between South Korea and North Korea. The peace agreement basically is between North Korea and the UN command. Now, once this war is stopped, and again, as a result of the end of this war, again the boundaries were again established in the same way how it was established before the war. That means 38th parallel was considered as the de facto boundary between the North and South Korea. However, there has been significant development of the barbed wire, and very strong boundaries have been created here, made up of electrical wire and fences, and that is what gave rise to the demilitarized zone. That is one of the most guarded boundary of the different of the world, we can say. Then after this, North Korea and South Korea's path toward development had diverged, and North Korea, under the influence of Korean Workers' Party, under the leadership of the Kim Jong Il, it went on to become a commercial, and it went on to become a kind of communist economy, and thus all the commercial and industrial enterprises had been nationalized. Also, all the farmers who were working in the agriculture sector were collectivized into cooperatives, as was done in the Soviet Union and the other communist states. On the other hand, if we talk about South Korea, since the country and its leadership was committed to the libertarian ideals and democracy, they had very strong anti-communist attitude, and thus they followed the path of capitalism. And it is due to these two divergent paths we can say that North Korea today has very low per capita income. They have issues with even providing basic necessities and needs to its population, while South Korea has emerged as one of the most vibrant and vibrant economy as well as vibrant democracy. Now, once North Korea's boundary and the South Korea's boundary were demarcated completely, what happened to North Korea? So, after 1960s, 1970s, by the time 1991 came, we know that Soviet Union, the epitome of communism, had already collapsed. The Soviet Union had disintegrated into multiple countries, and thus North Korea, due to this, also lost its main economical and government partner in the Soviet Union. Due to this, rather than depending on the ideology and the principles of communism, thus the then president of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, he decided to have a socialist state based on the principles of Juche. Now, Juche is the North Korean principle which basically revolves around the personality cult of the Kim family, and rather than depending or having any kind of relations with the foreign countries, it mainly focused on achieving self-reliance in all the spheres, whether it is economical sphere, whether it is cultural spheres, or even it is the political sphere. So, due to the principle of Juche being followed by the Kim Il Sung, the North Korea basically became a kind of isolated state, did not have any kind of relation or a strong relation with any other countries apart from China, and later on the successor of Soviet Union, that is Russia. Due to this, there has been instances of great famine in the North Korea multiple times, and also it has been going on through a phase of low economic growth because most of the resources of the country has been mobilized in the area of defense, where the North Korea is more focused and more interested in building and developing nuclear missiles rather than focusing upon the economic growth and development and raising the we can say the basic living standards of its population. Now, even after such a long period of time has passed, recent time there has been a lot of such conflict that has rose between North Korea and South Korea that even have given rise to a large scale war that can ravage the entire peninsula. The first such recent tension happened in year 2010 when there was a incident where South Korean leadership alleged that North Korea has sunk its warship by the name of Cheonan in the Yellow Sea region, while North Korea has kind of rejected this particular allegation. Similarly, North Korea has also launched an artillery attack in the South Korean islands of Yeonpyeong in the 2010 and 11 time period. And recently, if we talk about in this month and even in the last month, North Korea has launched a barrage of missiles toward the South Korean territories against the US South Korea military drills and military exercises that is going on around the water bodies of the South Korea. So the tensions is not subsiding, but we can say the tension between these two neighbors, between these two countries, are continuously on rise, and there's a real we can stand a situation can happen in the future where we can have a war between these two regions. So what we can understand in conclusion, that if we remember, it was two low level officials of the US government who made a very rushed decision, who made an arbitrary decision to divide the Korean peninsula into two parts after the heat and confusion of World War II. And it is due to this region we can trace back the permanent creation of two warring neighbors. And thus, these neighbors have further grown apart and grown in different directions economically, socially, linguistically, and most of all ideologically. And that is why, to understand that any real effort to again unify these two Koreas or bring them together will become a much more challenging task in the future as these two Korean countries diverge and go into different directions. So that is all for this particular video. I hope you understood about the brief history of Korea, the region and genesis of Korean War, and what was the cause that has caused the division of the Korean Peninsula into two different countries. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your fellow aspirants, as well as subscribe to our channel for more helpful content. Thank you very much.